Let's take a moment in silence to remember the victims of mass shootings. You may be seated. Truly, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. All our work, all our toil means nothing if the fruits of our work won't be enjoyed by us. That's how it works, right? We're born, we work hard. If we're lucky, we have a bit of retirement, and then we die. Hopefully not suddenly, in the latest shooting. All that's left to our name and our bank accounts and our garages go to others. And we won't have much say, or none at all, over what they do with it. Indeed, death is a fact of life. So there is wisdom in remembering that fact while we're still living, as our teacher from Ecclesiastes today reminds us. And there is foolishness in forgetting our mortality, in storing up goods for our enjoyment over the years to come, as Jesus reminds us in today's parable. Life is fleeting. So what then will be our legacy? It could be the possessions detailed in our wills and trusts, and I hope everyone at least has a will. It is a gift to those you leave behind. But what else will our legacy be? And what can we do while we are still living to leave a legacy that really shines? How can we let our coming death be a friend and teacher and guide that continually points us to what really matters? And what does really matter? Let's just think about it for a minute. What does really matter? What will make your heart glow with joy in the final moments of your life? It's our relationships, right? They're what matter. Our relationships with God and each other in this wondrous creation. God gives us the gift of life, gives us this fragile earth and each other, and says, have at it. Steward these gifts and delight in them. Pay attention to what you have and use, and share generously so that all my children may thrive. Discover the power of my love for you and share it with everyone you meet. We know all this. So why do we forget it day after day? Because once we leave these soaring arches and glorious songs, we enter once again into a world that tells us something entirely different. It matters what car you drive, how big your house is, how much is in your retirement account, what brand of clothes you wear, what school you went to, what your salary is, how many barns we have, and how much grain is stored in them. That's about as good a reason as any to keep coming back here week after week. To be reminded again and again and again about what really matters, our relationship with God and each other. Dare I say, it is the legacy we'll leave that really shines. So being Christian then is about relationship practice. And church is a school for relationships, which could be a new marketing tagline. Could bring in some more singles. But then how might we practice becoming rich toward God and each other? At St. Luke's, we've been thinking of church as a practice space for relationship building across lines of privilege and prejudice for a while now. And I'll tell you, it's hard work, messy and disappointing and harrowing work, glorious work too. A year ago, a Congolese mother and her 7 kids told us she'd like a ride to church. We enjoyed welcoming the Bacala family and enthusiastically introduced them to our other Congolese members after the service, though the conversation lasted about 30 seconds because they didn't speak the same language. The next Sunday before worship, Annie asked me if I knew a lawyer. It's always a dangerous question. And then showed me a piece of paper that stated that she and her kids were due in immigration court in 4 days. After freaking out for a bit, and then hearing more of their story, and freaking out some more, we were able to secure the gracious help of Mark Vizzola, some of you may know, to give the family some time until we could work out a more permanent attorney solution. An angel of a woman, Julie Hartle, then stepped up to take on their asylum case, which is still not resolved many months later. In the meantime, as their case, and the separate case of their still in detention father of the family, Constantine, wound their way through court, Annie and her kids came back to St. Luke's week after week. They sang in the choir. They served as acolytes and crucifers. They made the rest of us look foolish trying to compete in their impressive soccer games in the courtyard before and after service. And one after another of us came into real relationship with them. It was beautiful, and it was hard. It involved driving kids to soccer practice and figuring out how to rid an apartment of bed bugs. It involved standard teenage angst and poor judgment, amplified by cultural misunderstandings. And then it involved, a few months ago, a heart-stopping week during which we thought Constantine was going to be deported back to the Congo, where we truly believed he would be murdered. You can imagine by this past February, coming into a relationship with the Bacala family was no longer an isolated activity, but was changing our entire church. Thankfully, his deportation was delayed, and his lawyer, with help from congressional representatives and public pressure from many of you, has more recently won him the right to another day in court with an attorney this time. He had to represent himself the first time and lost, predictably. This all, which began with that little question, do you know a lawyer, has to date crescendoed into a press conference that we held during our Eucharist 2 weeks ago, in which Laurel, who was presiding and preaching, invited everyone in the pews to stand behind the Bacala family in front of the TV cameras. It was a dramatic moment, and indicative of the way our whole congregation has been transformed by one family's presence among us and the relationships that have formed with them. We appreciate your prayers as we continue waiting on a broken and overwhelmed immigration court system to issue its verdict on this family's plea for asylum from political persecution in the Congo. And you can be sure we will keep fighting for them now that we know them, now that we love them, imperfectly and in the mess of it all, of course. As I watched Fox and ABC and KUSI line up their cameras, and our congregation file resolutely behind Laurel and the Bacala family, I realized this was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. In other words, a moment I will look back on at the end of my life, whenever that may be, with gratitude that I was part of such a life-giving and life-changing set of relationships. In each of us, in our own lives, and in the lives of our families, our workplaces, and yes, our churches, is presented time and again with someone crossing our lives who, if we will let him or her, will change us, will imprint on us their uniquely human trace that carries God's image and honors God in us too. What will we do next time that person crosses our path? How will we live lives that are rich toward God and rich toward neighbor?